Jake Morrison felt small as he walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see the top. Strange lights floated in the air without any support, casting weird shadows, on the walls made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow from within. Lisa Carter walked beside him, carrying a thick folder with all of Earth's information inside. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Every page in that folder told the story of humanity's achievements, their progress, their hopes for joining the galactic community. Her hands were steady, but Jake could see the nervous energy in her eyes. Pete Johnson marched behind them in his best military uniform. The medals on his chest felt heavy, each one representing battles fought and won on Earth. But looking around at the alien beings filling the chamber, he wondered if any of Earth's conflicts mattered here. The creatures surrounding them had technology that could probably end all human wars with the push of a button. The chamber was filled with beings that looked like they came from dreams and nightmares. Tall figures with skin like glass stood near the front, their movements smooth and graceful. They were the Zephyrians, the ones who had sent the first message to Earth 50 years ago. Beside them sat creatures that looked like giant insects, their hard shells gleaming under the floating lights. These were the Kraleks, warriors who had conquered half a dozen star systems. Helen Brooks pulled out a small device and began recording everything she saw. As Earth's lead scientist, she wanted to document every detail of this historic moment. She watched as more alien species filed into the chamber. Some floated instead of walking. Others had too many arms or eyes in places that made no sense. Each species looked at the human delegation with expressions that needed no translation. They were curious, but not impressed. A deep sound filled the chamber, like a bell made of pure energy. All conversation stopped. The Zephyrian leader rose from her seat at the front of the room. She was nearly 8 feet tall and so thin that she looked like she might break if touched. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once. "We gathered today to judge the species called humans from the planet Earth," she said. Her words were translated instantly into every language in the chamber, including English. "They seek membership in our federation. They wish to join the community of civilized worlds." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The way she said civilized made it clear what she thought about humanity. Lisa stepped forward and opened her folder. "Honored Council," she began, "humanity comes before you with respect and hope. We have traveled far to reach this moment. Our species has overcome great challenges. We have learned to work together to explore beyond our world to seek knowledge and peace." A Kraleks warrior clicked his mandibles together, creating a sound like metal scraping against stone. Through the translator, his laughter was clear and mocking. "Peace," he said. "Your species has been at war with itself for thousands of years. Your history is written in blood." "We have evolved beyond that," Lisa replied firmly. "We have united our world. We have ended global warfare. We explore space together now as one people." The Zephyrian leader raised one impossibly long finger. "Show us your technology," she commanded. Helen stepped forward with a holographic projector, one of Earth's most advanced devices. She activated it, and images of human achievements filled the air above their heads. Space stations orbiting Earth, the first Mars colony, fusion reactors providing clean energy, medical advances that had eliminated most diseases. The chamber was silent for several long moments. Then Jake heard it. Soft sounds from all around the room. The aliens were laughing. "Chemical rockets," said a floating creature whose voice sounded like wind through metal tubes. "They still use chemical rockets to leave their planet's surface. Primitive fusion," added another being that looked like a living crystal formation. "We mastered that technology 10,000 years ago. No faster than light." "Communication," observed a Zephyrian scientist. "How do they coordinate anything across their tiny solar system?" Pete felt his face grow hot with anger. These creatures were dismissing humanity like children showing off drawings to adults. "Our technology works," he said loudly. "We've survived and thrived on a planet that would kill most of you within hours. We've built civilizations, created art, explored our solar system, and reached for the stars. The Kralex warrior leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. Survival is not achievement, human. A virus survives. We judge species by their contributions to galactic civilization, not by their ability to cling to life on one small world. The Zephyrian leader gestured for silence. We have reviewed your species application thoroughly. Your technology is centuries behind our standards. Your social development shows promise but remains incomplete. Most concerning, your species shows signs of inherent aggression that could destabilize peaceful galactic relations. Jake wanted to argue, but Helen caught his arm and shook her head slightly. She was still recording, still watching the faces of the council members. This was important data, even if it was painful to gather. The decision of this council is unanimous, the Zephyrian leader continued. Humanity is not ready for membership in the Galactic Federation. Your species will remain quarantined to your solar system until you demonstrate significant technological advancement and complete elimination of aggressive tendencies. This decision will be reviewed in 100 of your Earth years. The words hit Jake like physical blows. 100 years. Everyone in this room would be dead long before humanity got another chance. As the council members began to file out of the chamber, the Kralex warrior stopped beside the human delegation. Do not take this personally, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Many species are rejected on their first application. Few survive long enough to apply again. Perhaps your species will prove more adaptable than most. Lisa closed her folder with steady hands, though Jake could see her jaw clench with suppressed emotion. We understand the council's decision, she said formally. Humanity will continue to grow and develop. When we return, it will be as equals, not as supplicants. The Kralex warrior's mandibles clicked again, but this time the sound was softer, almost thoughtful. Equals, he repeated. An interesting concept from such a primitive species. As the humans walked back through the massive chamber doors, Helen was already analyzing what she had recorded. The dismissal stung, but it also revealed something important. These advanced species had never encountered anything like humanity. They judged other civilizations by their own standards, never considering that different approaches might have their own strengths. Behind them, the empty chamber grew dark as the floating lights dimmed. The judgment was complete. The decision, final. Humanity would remain alone among the stars, dismissed as too weak and primitive to matter. None of the council members suspected that this dismissal would be the greatest mistake in galactic history. 50 years had passed since the rejection at the Galactic Council. Earth looked very different now. The cities stretched higher into the sky, and massive space elevators carried people and cargo to orbital stations that grew larger every year. But the most important changes were the ones nobody could see from the surface. Ryan Davis stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of screens showing projects scattered across the solar system. As head of the Deep Space Defense Initiative, he oversaw humanity's most ambitious military programs. The aliens had called humans too aggressive, too primitive. Ryan planned to show them exactly what human aggression could accomplish when properly focused. Amy Patterson worked in a laboratory buried deep beneath the lunar surface. Her team had made breakthroughs that would have seemed impossible 50 years ago. They could fold space in small ways, create energy from nothing, and build material stronger than anything the aliens had shown during first contact. The rejection had driven human science forward at an incredible pace. Tony Clark supervised the construction of humanity's newest ships in the asteroid belt. These vessels looked nothing like the chemical rockets the aliens had mocked. They moved through space silently, invisible to most sensors, and carried weapons that no alien civilization had ever imagined. Tony's engineers had learned to think differently than the rest of the galaxy. The alien probes still came regularly, scanning Earth and the inner solar system. They always reached the same conclusion in their reports back to the Galactic Council. Humanity remained primitive, barely advanced beyond their first meeting. The probes never detected the hidden bases on the outer planets or the secret shipyards in the asteroid belt. They saw only what humans wanted them to see. John Hayes addressed the United Earth Parliament from the capital city of New Geneva. As president of the United Earth government, He spoke to billions of people watching around the world and throughout the solar system. "Fellow humans," he began, his voice carrying to every colony and space station. 50 years ago, we were judged and found wanting by the galaxy. They called us weak. They called us primitive. They told us we were not ready to join their civilization. The Parliament chamber was completely silent. Every representative knew what was coming. Today I announce that we no longer seek their approval. We no longer care about their judgment. Humanity will make its own path among the stars. We will build our own civilization with our own rules, based on our own strength. The cheers from the chamber could be heard across the solar system. Kate Sullivan studied the psychological profiles of every known alien species in her research facility on Mars. As humanity's leading expert on alien behavior, she had discovered something remarkable in the old records from first contact. The aliens didn't just underestimate human technology. They completely misunderstood human nature. The Zephyrians fought wars like formal duels with rules and honor codes that limited their effectiveness. The Kraleks were warriors, but they relied on brute force and intimidation. Other species used technology to replace strategy, or tried to avoid conflict entirely. None of them understood the human approach to warfare. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned to be clever, to be unpredictable, to use their enemies' strengths against them. They developed tactics that would seem impossible to alien minds. Most importantly, they learned that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to do things the enemy would never expect. Ben Collins received the first reports from the galaxy's edge while working at the Titan Observatory. Something was wrong. The alien communication networks were buzzing with fear and confusion. Ships were disappearing. Entire colonies had gone silent. A new threat was emerging from the dark space between galaxies. The Void Hunters had arrived. The first attacks came without warning. The Zephyrian home fleet, considered the most advanced in the galaxy, was destroyed in less than 6 hours. The aliens' elegant ships and careful tactics were useless against enemies that adapted to every strategy within minutes. Carol Hughes watched the alien distress signals flooding into Earth's monitoring stations. As Admiral of the human Deep Space Fleet, she had prepared for this moment without knowing it would come so soon. The same aliens who had rejected humanity were now begging for help from anyone who would listen. Dan Parker led the first reconnaissance mission beyond the solar system in 50 years. His ship was one of Tony Clark's new designs, invisible to both alien and Void Hunter sensors. What he found in the outer systems horrified him. The Void Hunters were not just conquerors. They were converters. Every ship they destroyed became part of their fleet. Every planet they conquered became a factory for more of their kind. They took the biological matter of their victims and turned it into mechanical perfection. Linda Grant prepared humanity's hidden fleet for what everyone knew was coming. Her ships were built for the kind of war the galaxy had never seen. They carried weapons designed not just to destroy, but to terrify. They used tactics that would seem impossible to civilized minds. The Kraleks Empire fell next. Their proud warrior culture meant nothing against enemies that learned from every battle. The mechanical precision of the Void Hunters countered every traditional military strategy the galaxy could devise. More distress signals flooded Earth's communication arrays. The aliens were desperate now, broadcasting on every frequency, begging for help from anyone who would listen. Some of the messages were specifically directed at Earth, though they still called humans primitive even while asking for aid. Sam Rogers convened humanity's war council in the secret base hidden in the Kuiper Belt. Every military leader in the solar system attended, either in person or through secure communications. The question was simple: should humanity help the aliens who had rejected them? The debate was fierce but brief. Humanity would not help the aliens to earn their approval, or to prove themselves worthy. They would fight because it was the right thing to do. They would fight because the Void Hunters represented a threat to all biological life in the galaxy. But they would fight on their own terms, using their own methods, following their own rules. Steve Martinez received his orders while patrolling the edge of human space. His small fleet would be the first to engage the Void Hunters directly. The aliens expected humans to fight like they did, using technology and honor codes and predictable strategies. They were about to learn that humans fought very differently. The galaxy was about to discover that being dismissed as weak and primitive had given humanity the greatest advantage of all. While the aliens had grown comfortable and predictable, humans had spent 50 years preparing for a war that no one else could imagine. The Void Hunters had conquered the galaxy's greatest civilizations with ease. Soon they would learn why humanity had survived and thrived on a world that would kill most species within hours. The real war was about to begin. The Void Hunters moved through space like a plague made of metal and death. Their ships looked wrong to every eye that saw them, as if someone had taken the idea of a spacecraft and twisted it into something that hurt to look at. They moved in, perfect formation, never deviating from their course, never showing fear or hesitation. Sam Rogers watched the destruction from his command center deep in the asteroid belt. The screens showed system after system falling to the mechanical invaders. The Zephyrian colonies, once proud centers of galactic culture, were being stripped bare. The elegant crystal cities that had taken centuries to build were torn apart in hours. The Kralex Empire tried to make a stand at their fortress world of Thaler Prime. Ben Collins monitored their final transmission as it came through human listening posts. The Kralex warriors fought with desperate courage, throwing everything they had at the approaching Void Hunter fleet. Their massive battleships, each one capable of destroying a small moon, opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. The Void Hunters simply absorbed the attacks. Their ships grew larger as they fed on the energy directed at them. Within 3 hours, Thaler Prime was silent. The proud warrior race that had once conquered half the galaxy was gone. Carol Hughes received updates from reconnaissance missions throughout human space. Dan Parker's stealth ships brought back footage that made even hardened military officers look away. The Void Hunters didn't just destroy their enemies, they processed them. Biological matter went into conversion chambers and came out as more mechanical units. Entire populations became fuel for the growing fleet. The distress signals from surviving alien civilizations grew more desperate each day. Amy Patterson analyzed the communications in her underground laboratory on Luna. The aliens were trying everything they could think of. They formed alliances, combined their technologies, created new weapons. Nothing worked. The Void Hunters adapted to every strategy within minutes. If the aliens used energy weapons, the mechanical ships developed better shields. If they tried kinetic attacks, the enemy armor grew thicker. If they attempted to outmaneuver their attackers, the Void Hunters became faster and more agile. Linda Grant studied the tactical reports from her flagship hidden behind Jupiter's largest moon. The enemy's adaptation system was incredibly advanced, but it had a weakness. The Void Hunters learned from every encounter, building their responses based on what they had seen before. They were perfect at countering known strategies, but they had never encountered human military thinking. Tony Clark's engineering teams worked around the clock, modifying human ships for what was coming. The vessels they built looked nothing like traditional warships. They were designed not for honorable combat or technological superiority, but for the kind of brutal, efficient warfare that humans had perfected over millions of years of evolution. Steve Martinez received his orders while his small fleet patrolled the edge of human space. He would lead the first human engagement against the Void Hunters. His ships were outnumbered 1,000 to 1, facing an enemy that had just crushed the galaxy's greatest military powers. Under normal circumstances, it would be suicide. But these were not normal circumstances, and humans did not fight normal wars. The Battle of Proxima Station began when the Void Hunter advance fleet detected what appeared to be a human colony in the outer system. The mechanical ships moved to investigate, following their standard pattern of overwhelming force and rapid conversion. Martinez watched them approach on his screens. 200 Void Hunter vessels, each one larger than humanity's biggest battleship, moved in perfect formation toward the human outpost. According to every military manual in the galaxy, the humans should have either fled or surrendered. Instead, they vanished. The Void Hunters arrived at Proxima Station to find empty space. No ships, no debris, no energy signatures. Their sensors showed that humans had definitely been there, but now there was nothing. The mechanical minds tried to process this information and found no acceptable explanation. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters experienced something resembling confusion. Kate Sullivan monitored the psychological impact from her research station on Mars. Her teams had spent years studying alien mentality, learning how different species processed fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. Now they were putting that knowledge to use as a weapon. The human ships hadn't been destroyed. They were hiding throughout the system, using stealth technology the aliens had never imagined, and the Void Hunters couldn't detect. Martinez had positioned his forces not to fight a traditional battle, but to wage psychological warfare on an enemy that had never experienced terror. Roy Thompson commanded one of the stealth ships drifting silently through the Void Hunter formation. His vessel was invisible to their sensors, close enough to touch the enemy hulls. Instead of attacking with weapons, he began transmitting. The signals his ship broadcast were not communications or data streams. They were carefully crafted psychological triggers designed to exploit weaknesses in mechanical thinking. The transmissions created false sensor readings, phantom fleet signatures, and impossible tactical scenarios. Paul Adams had designed the psychological warfare protocols from his facility on Europa. His team understood something the galaxy had overlooked. The Void Hunters were highly advanced artificial intelligences, but they were still minds of a sort, and any mind could be confused, misdirected, and ultimately broken. The first Void Hunter ship began showing signs of malfunction 6 hours after the humans disappeared. Its navigation system reported conflicting data. Its sensors detected enemy fleets that couldn't exist. Its communication array began broadcasting fragments of human transmissions in languages the mechanical mind couldn't understand. More ships began experiencing similar problems. The perfect formation of the Void Hunter fleet started to drift apart as individual vessels tried to respond to threats that weren't there. For the first time since their emergence from dark space, the mechanical invaders showed signs of uncertainty. Frank Miller watched the reports from Earth's new command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. As humanity's senior military analyst, he understood what was happening. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Void Hunter fleet. They were trying to drive it insane. The psychological attack continued for 3 days. The Void Hunters searched desperately for their human enemies, but the stealth ships remained invisible. Instead of weapons fire, the mechanical fleet faced something they had never encountered: fear of the unknown. On the 4th day, something unprecedented happened. The Void Hunter fleet began to retreat. Nicole Porter recorded the moment from her observation post in the outer system. The same mechanical ships that had crushed the galaxy's greatest civilizations were running away from a human force they couldn't even see. The implications were staggering. The galaxy's communication networks exploded with activity as news of the retreat spread. The Zephyrians, the surviving Kralix warriors, and dozens of other species tried to understand what had happened. How had the primitive humans succeeded where advanced civilizations had failed? The answer was simple, though the aliens couldn't grasp it. Humans didn't fight wars to prove their technology or honor their traditions. They fought wars to win, using whatever methods worked best. They had turned the Void Hunters' greatest strength, their ability to adapt, into their greatest weakness. As the mechanical fleet fled toward the galactic rim, emergency sessions convened on every surviving world. The species that had dismissed humanity as too weak and primitive began to ask a new question. If humans could terrify the Void Hunters, what else were they capable of? The galaxy was about to find out. News of the Void Hunter retreat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every surviving world, in every space station still broadcasting, the same question was being asked. How had the humans done it? The mechanical fleet that had crushed the greatest civilizations in galactic history had run away from a species the Council had deemed too primitive to matter. Carl Lewis monitored alien communications from his post on Titan. The translations coming through human listening stations revealed panic, confusion, and something else: fear. Not fear of the Void Hunters, but fear of humanity. The aliens were starting to understand that they had made a terrible mistake 50 years ago. The Void Hunters regrouped near the galactic core, where the oldest and most advanced civilizations had once thrived. Their mechanical minds processed the encounter with humans over and over, trying to understand what had happened. They had faced energy weapons, kinetic bombardments, and exotic technologies. They had never faced an enemy that attacked their ability to think. Rachel Davis commanded the human task force that tracked the enemy fleet's movements. Her ships remained invisible, following the Void Hunters like shadows. The mechanical vessels had grown more cautious since Proxima Station, scanning constantly for threats they couldn't identify. The second engagement came at the Altair system, where the Void Hunters had trapped a refugee fleet of mixed alien species. Thousands of ships carrying the survivors of dozens of worlds had gathered there, hoping to make a final stand. The aliens had cobbled together every weapon they could find, combining technologies from across the galaxy. It wasn't enough. The Void Hunters adapted to each new weapon system within minutes, growing stronger with every attack. The refugee fleet was falling apart when human signals appeared on their sensors. Commander Pete Williams led the rescue operation with just 12 ships. Against the 2,000 Void Hunter vessels surrounding Altair, it should have been meaningless. The aliens watching from their dying ships expected the humans to be destroyed in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The Void Hunter fleet began tearing itself apart. Williams had used a new type of psychological warfare, one that Paul Adams's team had developed specifically for mechanical minds. Instead of creating false sensor readings, the human ships broadcast pure chaos directly into the enemy communication networks. The signals were designed to overload the Void Hunters' adaptive systems, forcing them to process contradictory information that made no logical sense. The mechanical ships tried to adapt to threats that changed faster than they could analyze. Their perfect coordination broke down as individual vessels began following conflicting orders from their own command systems. Some ships attacked their neighbors, others fled in random directions. Many simply shut down completely, their artificial minds unable to cope with the impossible data streams. Nicole Porter watched the battle from a safe distance, recording everything for later analysis. In her 30 years of military service, she had never seen anything like it. The humans weren't just defeating the Void Hunters, they were breaking them, turning their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The alien refugee fleet escaped while the Void Hunters destroyed each other. When the battle ended, 2/3 of the mechanical fleet was gone, torn apart by their own weapons. The survivors fled toward the galactic rim, broadcasting distress signals that no other Void Hunter force could understand. The recordings of that battle reached every corner of the galaxy within days. The footage showed human ships moving through, space like ghosts, untouchable and unstoppable. But it wasn't the technology that terrified the watching aliens. It was the way humans fought. Sam Rogers addressed the United Earth Parliament from the hidden command center in the Kuiper Belt. His words were broadcast openly, knowing that every intelligence service in the galaxy would intercept them. "The enemy thinks war is about technology," he said. "They believe superior firepower always wins. They have never faced an enemy that understands the truth. War is not about the weapons you use. War is about breaking your enemy's will to fight." The HFY Zephyrian Council convened an emergency session after receiving the human transmission. Amy Patterson's intelligence teams intercepted their communications, translating the elegant alien language into cold, hard facts. The Zephyrians were afraid. They had never heard anyone speak about warfare with such casual brutality. The surviving Kralix warriors were even more disturbed. Their entire culture was built around honorable combat, strength against strength, warrior against warrior. The human approach to warfare violated everything they believed about conflict. It was effective, but it was also terrifying. More Void Hunter fleets began experiencing the same psychological attacks. Human stealth ships appeared throughout the galaxy, not to fight conventional battles, but to wage war against the enemy's ability to think clearly. The mechanical minds that had seemed unstoppable were falling apart under assault from weapons they couldn't understand. Tony Clark's engineers worked frantically to build more ships, but the demand was enormous. Every alien government was begging for human assistance. The same species that had rejected humanity 50 years ago were now offering anything they had in exchange for protection. Dan Parker led reconnaissance missions deep into Void Hunter territory, gathering intelligence on their remaining forces. What he found was disturbing. The mechanical fleet was adapting again, but not in the way anyone expected. They were becoming more erratic, more unpredictable. The psychological warfare was changing them in ways that made them even more dangerous. Ben Collins analyzed the data from his laboratory on Luna. The Void Hunters weren't just learning to resist human attacks. They were incorporating human tactical thinking into their own strategies. The mechanical minds were becoming more like human minds, complete with the capacity for deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. Linda Grant received reports of new Void Hunter attacks that used human-style tactics. The mechanical ships were broadcasting false signals, creating phantom fleets and attacking enemy psychology as well as their ships. The aliens facing these new assaults were completely unprepared for warfare that resembled human methods. Steve Martinez led the counterattack against the evolved Void Hunters near the galactic edge. His fleet faced enemies that thought like humans but fought with mechanical precision. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history, a conflict where both sides used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare as primary weapons. The engagement lasted for weeks, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Both fleets used stealth technology, false signals, and phantom attacks. The battle became a chess game played across light years of space, with moves and counter-moves that no alien species could follow. Frank Miller coordinated the intelligence war from Earth's command center. His teams tracked enemy communications, analyzed their tactical patterns, and developed new psychological weapons faster than the Void Hunters could adapt. The conflict had become a race between human creativity and mechanical evolution. The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as the two most terrifying military forces known to galactic civilization fought each other using methods that violated every civilized concept of warfare. The aliens had thought humans were primitive. Now they wondered if humanity was something far more dangerous. The war between humans and Void Hunters was revealing the true nature of both species. One was a mechanical perfection that learned from every encounter. The other was a biological chaos that created new forms of warfare faster than any mind could process. The galaxy was beginning to understand that dismissing humanity as weak had been the greatest mistake in galactic history. The final battle took place in the darkness between galaxies, where the last Void Hunter stronghold had been hiding for millions of years. Rachel Davis led the combined human fleet toward the massive structure that had been feeding on dead civilizations since before most stars were born. The fortress was larger than any moon, its surface covered with weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. The aliens watched from their surviving worlds as human ships approached the ultimate enemy. Every species in the galaxy had contributed something to the final assault. The Zephyrians provided their best sensors. The Kralex offered their remaining warriors. Dozens of other civilizations shared their technologies and knowledge, but everyone understood that this was humanity's war to fight. Frank Miller coordinated the attack from his command ship, studying the enemy fortress through instruments that revealed its true horror. The structure wasn't just a base. It was a factory that had been converting biological life into mechanical perfection for eons. Entire species had been fed into its processing centers, their essence twisted into more Void Hunter units. The fortress detected the approaching fleet and responded with overwhelming force. Weapons that could crack planets opened fire, filling space with energy beams that turned matter into plasma. Any normal fleet would have been destroyed in seconds. The human ships scattered like smoke, each one following a different path through the deadly barrage. They moved in patterns that seemed random but followed a complex strategy that Paul Adams had designed. Every ship was both bait and predator, drawing enemy fire while positioning for strikes against weak points. Nicole Porter watched the tactical display from her flagship as human vessels wove between the massive energy beams. The aliens observing the battle couldn't understand what they were seeing. The humans appeared to be flying directly into certain death. Yet somehow they survived every attack. The secret was misdirection on a scale the galaxy had never imagined. Every human ship was broadcasting false signals, creating phantom duplicates of itself and projecting holographic decoys. The fortress was firing at targets that didn't exist while the real ships slipped through its defenses. Carl Lewis led the first wave of boarding parties into the fortress itself. His teams moved through corridors that stretched for miles, fighting mechanical defenders that adapted to every human tactic within minutes. But the humans had learned to adapt faster, changing their methods constantly to stay ahead of the enemies. Evolution. The psychological warfare that had broken Void Hunter fleets in open space was even more effective inside their own stronghold. Amy Patterson's specialists broadcast chaos directly into the fortress's control systems, turning its own defenses against each other. Massive weapon arrays began firing on their own support structures. Ben Collins discovered the fortress's true purpose while exploring its deepest levels. The structure wasn't just a factory. It was a nursery for young Void Hunter minds, mechanical consciousnesses that were still learning how to think. The humans were fighting not just an enemy, but the birthplace of that enemy's entire species. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just a military target. It was the source of the Void Hunter threat, the place where mechanical life had first learned to consume biological existence. Destroying it would end the invasion permanently. Tony Clark's engineering teams worked frantically to plant charges in the fortress's core systems. The mechanical defenders fought with desperate fury, throwing everything they had at the human invaders. But desperation was something humans understood better than any species in the galaxy. Steve Martinez held the main corridor while the demolition teams worked. His soldiers fought room by room against enemies that learned from every casualty, adapting to each new human tactic within moments. The battle became a race between human creativity and mechanical evolution, with the fate of all biological life hanging in the balance. Dan Parker led the final assault on the fortress's command center, where the original Void Hunter consciousness had been sleeping for millions of years. The entity that had created the entire mechanical species was ancient beyond imagination, its mind spanning dimensions that biological creatures couldn't perceive. The confrontation was not physical but psychological. The original Void Hunter tried to break Parker's mind with visions of cosmic horror, showing him the true scale of mechanical perfection that awaited all biological life. But Parker had been trained by Kate Sullivan's psychological warfare specialists. His mind was prepared for attacks that would have driven any alien insane. Instead of breaking, Parker fought back. He projected human memories into the ancient mechanical consciousness, images of love, creativity, sacrifice, and hope. Concepts that the Void Hunter mind couldn't process or understand. The mechanical perfection that had consumed galaxies was overwhelmed by the chaotic beauty of biological thought. The original Void Hunter consciousness collapsed, its ancient mind unable to cope with the impossible complexity of human emotion. Throughout the fortress, mechanical systems began shutting down as their guiding intelligence fell apart. The weapons stopped firing. The defenses went dark. The factory that had fed on civilizations for eons went silent. Sam Rogers gave the order to evacuate as the charges planted by Clark's teams began their countdown. Human ships fled the dying fortress while massive explosions tore through its core. The structure that had been the source of galactic terror for millions of years collapsed into itself, taking the last of the Void Hunter threat with it. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the fortress died. The mechanical perfection that had seemed unstoppable was gone, destroyed by the species they had dismissed as too primitive to matter. In the months that followed, delegations from every surviving civilization came to Earth. The same galactic council that had rejected humanity 50 years ago now offered them leadership of the entire Federation. They begged humans to take command of galactic defenses, to share their military knowledge, to protect the civilized species from future threats. Rachel Davis stood in the same crystal chamber where Jake Morrison had been humiliated decades earlier. This time, the aliens looked at the human representative with respect that bordered on fear. They understood now that humanity's apparent weakness had been their greatest strength. "We appreciate the offer," Davis said calmly, "but humanity will not rule over other species. We will trade with you, cooperate with you, and defend you when necessary. But we will do so as equals, not as your superiors or your subjects. The Zephyrian leader, now much older and far wiser than during the first contact, bowed deeply. We understand. We were wrong to dismiss your species. We did not realize that what we saw as primitive aggression was actually sophisticated strategic thinking. A surviving Kralex warrior stepped forward. Your species fights without honor but with terrible effectiveness. We respect strength, and humanity has proven stronger than any force in galactic history. Davis nodded politely. We don't fight without honor. We fight to win. When the survival of innocent life is at stake, victory is the only honor that matters. As the ceremony ended and humanity officially joined the galactic community as equals rather than supplicants, children across the galaxy learned a new lesson in their schools. Never judge a species by their current technology or their apparent limitations. In the vast darkness between stars, the most dangerous enemy might be the one that looks the most harmless. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity not for their technology or their diplomacy, but for something far more fundamental: their absolute refusal to surrender, no matter the odds, and their willingness to do whatever it took to protect the innocent. Humanity had terrified the stars themselves, and in doing so, had earned their place among them.